If you ever grow up in a family with a golden child, you learn something early: fairness isn't real. It's just something people talk about in public, like a myth. In private? It's favoritism with just enough spin to make you question your memory. My brother Bryce was the man of the house before he even hit puberty. My parents, Janine and Robert, made sure we all knew it. Every decision, every rule, every praise centered around him. And not because he earned it, but because he was born male. That was enough for them. Growing up, I learned to disappear in real time. If Bryce got a B, it was great effort. If I got an A, why not an A+? He got a car at 17. I got a lecture on learning the bus schedule. When he stayed out late, it was boys will be boys. When I missed a single curfew, I lost phone privileges for a month. It wasn't subtle. It was structural. And it never changed. By the time we hit our 20s, I had already moved out. I paid my rent, worked full-time, and managed a life built on discipline. I didn't rely on anyone, especially not my parents. Meanwhile, Bryce still lived at home. No stable job. No real direction. But somehow still the favorite. When I bought my first house, I didn't tell them right away. Not because I was hiding it, but because I didn't want to hear the shade in my mom's voice. The kind of praise that comes with a disclaimer. Oh, that's good for you. But don't forget, Bryce is still finding his path. So I waited. Eventually, I invited them over. Just them, no Bryce. I cooked, set the table, and made it nice. They walked in, gave the place a once-over, and the first words out of my dad's mouth were, "So, how long are you planning to keep this place?" Not, "Wow, you bought a house." Not, "We're proud of you." Just a loaded question. I laughed awkwardly. Indefinitely. It's mine." He looked at my mom. They exchanged that look. "You know the one." "Well," my mom said, smoothing out her sweater, "we just think it's such a large space for one person. And Bryce needs something stable." I blinked. "Wait, are you saying what I think you're saying?" She tilted her head, as if I were being unreasonable. "It just makes more sense. He's the man of the family. He deserves a solid foundation." That was when I knew. They didn't see my success as mine. They saw it as something temporary, like a resource they could reroute when Bryce finally decided to act like an adult. And they fully expected me to agree. I didn't. I didn't explode. I didn't argue. I just cleared the plates, ended the night early, and told them I'd call them a ride. They left confused, slightly offended. I locked the door behind them and stood in my kitchen, shaking, not from fear. From rage. Because I realized something that night. They weren't proud of me. They were waiting to transfer what I'd built to the person they wished had built it. 3 days later, Bryce showed up at my house uninvited. Knocked like he owned the place. I opened the door, and he walked right in. "Mom said you were being difficult. She told me to come talk to you." I stared at him, stunned. He looked around like he was already planning furniture arrangements. Then he turned and said, "Look, Leah. You've always been good at the responsible stuff. And I appreciate you holding it down. But come on, this place makes way more sense for me. You don't even use the second bedroom." That's when I laughed. It wasn't kind. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You think because you're the man of the family, you should get the house I bought with my money, on my credit, with my labor?" He blinked, as if he wasn't sure if I was serious or joking. "Well, yeah. Isn't that kind of the point?" And right then I understood something I hadn't wanted to face before. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was generational entitlement, baked into him, spoon-fed by our parents, and served back to me like a favor. I told him to leave. He did, but not before saying, "You're gonna regret this. Mom and Dad won't forget it." And I said, "Good. Neither will I." After I told Bryce to leave, I didn't sleep. Not out of guilt. But because I couldn't stop thinking about how normal it had all felt to him. How confident he was walking into my house, speaking like he was next in line for the throne. How my parents had raised him to believe everything I built was just holding space for him, like I was the placeholder until he showed up. I blocked his number. Didn't answer texts from Janine or Robert either. For 3 days, silence. On the fourth, I got a voicemail from my mom. Leah, I think you're blowing this out of proportion. We were just trying to do what's best for the family. Don't be so emotional. Call us back. That line? What's best for the family? Always code for, do what Bryce wants. I didn't call back. But they kept pushing. Emails. Messages. One passive-aggressive note from my dad that said, "We raised you better than this. We always assumed you'd know your role." My role. As what, exactly? Backup plan? Free housing department? I finally snapped. Not publicly. Just in my head. I realized I needed distance, real distance. Not just space. Boundaries. Legal ones. I went to a lawyer friend I knew from college, Natalie, and asked her what steps I could take to protect myself, just in case they got bold. She told me what to prepare. Document everything, make sure no one else had keys, update my locks, and keep my financial records secure. They can't touch what you own, she said, but that won't stop them from trying to make your life miserable. She was right. The following week, I decided to go no contact. I didn't send a dramatic message. Didn't explain myself. I just went quiet. No updates. No invitations. No access. For a few weeks, it was peaceful. Then came Thanksgiving. They tried again. My mom left a voicemail full of forced warmth. "We're having dinner. Everyone will be there. Even Bryce. You don't want to miss it, do you?" I didn't answer. Instead, I booked a solo weekend trip out of town. Cabin, fireplace, zero reception. When I came back, I felt better. Stronger. Until I stopped by their house to pick up some old boxes they'd been holding in the garage. They weren't home. But I had the garage code. Thought it'd be quick. It wasn't. While looking for my boxes, I found something odd. A folder labeled with my name, stuck in a file cabinet near the back. Curious, I opened it. Inside? Printouts of my social media. Old photos of me at work events. Screenshots of job listings I'd posted. Even a copy of my property tax record. My mortgage balance. I felt my stomach drop. At the back of the folder was a handwritten note, my dad's writing. "If she doesn't cooperate, we'll escalate. Bryce will need this for legal support." I froze. Legal support? That wasn't a disagreement. That was a plan. I snapped photos of everything. Left the folder exactly where I found it. Backed out of the garage and sat in my car, keys in hand, heart pounding. They hadn't just hoped I'd hand over the house. They were preparing to force it. I called Natalie that night and told her everything. She went quiet, then said, "Okay. First, we secure everything. Then we hit them where it hurts, legally, quietly, and permanently." That's when I made 3 moves. Updated my deed protections. Made sure it was locked under my name alone, with layers of legal reinforcement. Filed a cease and desist against my parents and Bryce, citing harassment, pre-litigation activity, and intrusion of privacy. Changed my will, yes, early, but necessary, to ensure nothing would ever be rerouted without my say. I wasn't scared anymore. I was done playing nice. A few days later, I got a letter from my dad. Typed. Cold. "We're disappointed in the way you've handled this. Family isn't about property. It's about trust. You've broken that." He ended it with, "Don't come back unless you're ready to talk like an adult. Talk like an adult. In other words, submit." I folded the letter in half. Slipped it into the same folder I'd made for myself, labeled insurance, and wrote one word on it in a bold marker. Control. After I filed the cease and desist, the tone changed. No more fake warmth. No more guilt-tripping voicemails. Just silence. For a while, I thought they might have backed off. That maybe the message had finally landed. This isn't negotiable. But entitlement doesn't vanish that easily. It waits. It schemes. And when you don't hand over what it thinks it deserves, it tries to take it. 2 weeks after I had everything legally locked, I came home late from work. Porch light was off, strange, because I'd set it on a timer. As I stepped up to the door, I noticed the lock looked off. Not broken, but tampered with. When I got inside, nothing seemed out of place at first. Then I saw it. One of the bedroom windows was cracked open from the inside. That window had been shut and locked for months. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I walked through the house, one room at a time, checking every door, every drawer. Then I opened the hall closet and found it. A duffel bag. Stuffed with men's clothes. Bryce's. I stared at it for a full minute before I picked it up. He hadn't just broken in. He was trying to move in. No note. No text. No conversation. Just clothes quietly planted like a flag, like this house was unclaimed land waiting for its rightful heir. I called the police. Gave them the full story. The C&D. The break-in. The fact that no one, had permission to be in my home except me. When they came, they confirmed there were no signs of forced entry. I already knew what happened. Janine had the garage code. She gave it to him. Probably told him. She's emotional. She'll calm down. Just be there when she does. Bryce showed up 2 hours later. Pulled into the driveway like nothing was wrong. Saw the squad car and froze. I stood on the porch with the officer and said calmly, "That's him." He entered without my consent. "That bag? His." The officer approached him. Bryce immediately started spinning. "This is my family's house. She's just upset right now. We talked about this already." I didn't flinch. We didn't. And even if we had, that was before you tried to go behind my back and steal what I built. They didn't arrest him. But they did make it very clear, if he came back again without invitation, it would be criminal trespassing. He left furious. But he left. And that was enough for now. The next day, I changed the locks again. Deleted the garage code. Installed cameras. Got a dog. Not out of fear. Out of certainty that if they couldn't manipulate me, they'd try to intimidate me. But I wasn't going anywhere. A few days later, I got an email from Janine. Just one line. "I hope you're proud of how far you've let this go. No, how are you? No, we're sorry. Just shame, rewritten as disappointment." I didn't respond. Because I wasn't ashamed. I was done apologizing for having boundaries that they never expected me to grow. For a while, things were quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like the eye of a storm. And then? The final play. A formal letter. Delivered to my mailbox. From a lawyer. Not a real estate attorney. A family mediation one. Inside a formal proposal. From my parents, a family-based redistribution agreement. It said, and I quote, "In recognition of Bryce's role as the male heir, and Leah's position as a single woman with no dependents, we request a transfer of home ownership under a conditional cohabitation plan." I laughed. Loud. Like genuinely, can't breathe kind of laughter. Because they were still trying to wrap theft in tradition. Still calling it love. Still hoping I'd fold. I sent the letter to Natalie. She reviewed it, then replied with one sentence. "Do you want to destroy this in court or just scare them off with a counter-threat?" I chose the second. We drafted a response that outlined all the legal violations they'd committed so far, then included a draft restraining order, unfiled, but ready. We CC'd the original lawyer. That was the last I ever heard of redistribution. After we sent the legal response, the silence became permanent. No more negotiations. No more threats masked as traditions. No more pop-up visits or guilt-laced voicemails. Just nothing. They didn't reach out for weeks. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't reach either. I stopped being the one who kept the thread tied. No holiday check-ins. No birthday texts. No fake smiles over dinner tables that always had Bryce at the head and me at the corner. I let it all go. And you know what? The air felt cleaner without them in it. I poured myself into what I'd built, not just the house, but everything. My business. My friendships. My routines that no longer needed to orbit around expectations I never agreed to. I bought myself furniture I loved. Art that made no sense to anyone but me. I painted a wall navy blue just because it felt like claiming something. Started hosting dinners with people who asked questions and actually listened. Stopped checking the family thread completely. They never removed me. But I think they stopped tagging me on purpose. I didn't care. And then? The opportunities started showing up, without me chasing them. A former client referred me to a nonprofit that wanted a full brand rebuild. They loved my work, gave me full creative control, paid well. I took it. The same week, a local podcast asked me to speak, not just about design, but about boundaries. Someone had passed along a Twitter thread I posted months ago about saying no to family expectations. It had quietly gone viral. I hadn't even noticed. I sat in the studio, mic in front of me, telling a room full of strangers something I never imagined I'd say out loud. You don't owe your family access just because they raised you. Especially if all they ever did was remind you what you lacked. There was silence. Then the host nodded slowly and said, "That's going to sit with a lot of people." It sat with me, too. Because I hadn't said it to be profound. I'd said it because it was the first time I believed it. Weeks passed. I started smiling without wondering who would weaponize it. Started waking up without that tight feeling in my chest. And then one afternoon, while walking home from a coffee shop, I saw something that made me stop. Janine. Standing outside my house. She didn't have a reason to be there. She didn't knock. Just stood at the edge of the sidewalk, arms crossed, staring at the front door like it owed her something. I slowed my steps. Didn't hide. Just walked past her and unlocked my door. She turned. "So this is how it is now?" I didn't say anything. She tried again. "We raised you. We gave you everything. And you threw it back in our face." I paused. Turned to face her fully. "You raised Bryce," I said. "You tolerated me." Her mouth opened, then closed again. She wasn't used to that version of me. The one who didn't need her approval, or her permission. She tried one last card. "You'll be alone when we're gone. Think about that." I nodded slowly. "I have. And I'd rather be alone on my terms, than surrounded by people who only ever showed up to take." She left without another word. I watched her walk away and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. I went back inside. Turned off my phone. Made tea. Played music. Sat on my couch, the one I picked out, paid for, and protected. And thought, this is mine. Not just the house. The peace. The silence. The self-respect. I had earned every square inch of it. And no one could unmake that. It's strange how quickly your life expands once you stop asking permission to live it. The moment I stopped explaining myself to my parents, stopped trying to earn my place in a family that never truly made space for me, my world got bigger. Not louder. Just fuller. I started saying yes to things I'd once been too busy surviving to consider. Collaborations. Speaking gigs. A weekend retreat in another state with creative professionals I used to be too intimidated to even DM. And it wasn't about recognition. It was about finally building for me. The house stopped being a battleground. It became an anchor. I renovated the guest room into a studio. Painted the door teal. Hanging string lights that made no practical sense but brought me joy every time I walked in. I framed a note from a client that simply said, "You helped me believe my voice mattered." And below it, I wrote one line in pen. So did I. One morning, I got a letter in the mail, not from my family. From the city. It was a request to feature my business in a small business spotlight series. A friend had nominated me without telling me. I said yes. They came to the house. Took photos. Asked how I got started. I told the truth. That I spent years being overlooked. Years making myself smaller. Years of being told that everything I built was temporary, a placeholder for someone else. And then I stopped waiting for approval and built it anyway. The article went up. It didn't go viral. But it landed in the local loop. 3 days later, I got an email from an old high school teacher. Saw your feature. I remember how quiet you were. I hope you know a lot of us are proud of you. I sat with that message longer than I expected. Because there's something sacred about being seen by someone who has no reason to flatter you. Someone who just remembers. Janine never said a word about the article. Neither did Robert. Bryce? He blocked me after the failed redistribution attempt. I was ungrateful. That's the word they always fall back on. Not disobedient, that would imply rules were broken. Ungrateful means I didn't clap for what they were willing to give, even if it was just breadcrumbs after years of silence. But I wasn't ungrateful. I just stopped pretending their version of love was enough. Later that month, I created something I never thought I'd get to. A mentorship program. One-on-one sessions with young women in creative fields who didn't come from money, connections, or perfectly supportive families. I offered it for free. 4 spots. All filled within 2 days. Every single application had a line that made me pause, a sentence that echoed something I had once thought and buried. I just want to know if it's still worth trying when no one believes in you. It is. God, it is. The first mentee I met with, Maya, 22, sharp, determined, quiet in the same way I used to be, asked me what kept me going when everything felt like it was stacked against me. I told her the truth. I stopped waiting for people to see me. I saw myself. And that changed everything. We're still in touch. She texts me updates. Sends me screenshots of client wins. The other day, she messaged. I just raised my rate. Thought of you while I did it. That's the legacy. Not the family name. Not inheritance or bloodline or duty. The legacy is showing someone else that you can start from zero and still claim your worth, and keep it. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not waiting for reconciliation. I'm not rewriting history or trying to make it pretty. I'm living forward, with both hands on the wheel. And I've never felt more like myself. It's quiet now. Not the kind of quiet that feels heavy or awkward. The kind that feels earned. Like walking out of a storm, soaked but alive, realizing you never needed the shelter. You just needed to learn how to move through the rain without apologizing for getting wet. That's what my life sounds like now. No more phone calls I have to brace myself for. No more dinners where I pretend not to hear the comparison. No more shrinking myself to keep peace that was never mine to hold. The house is still mine. Every wall. Every window. Not just because my name is on the deed, but because I decided that I didn't need anyone else's permission to be proud of what I built. Sometimes, I light a candle at night and sit in the quiet, looking around. And I feel it in my chest. You did this. You kept it. You protected it. And no one took it from you. Not even the people who were supposed to want the best for you. I don't check for updates on Janine or Robert. Bryce is still off the map, blocked, forgotten, irrelevant. There's no pain there. No longing. Just neutrality. Like a chapter I've already turned the page on. And when people ask about my family, I tell the truth, carefully. I don't talk to them anymore. It was a hard decision. But the right one. Some people nod with understanding. Others try to sympathize too fast. But I don't need them to feel bad for me. Because I don't. I still get the occasional message from people who knew me before. High school classmates. Old neighbors. Coworkers I haven't seen in years. Most of them say some version of the same thing. You look happier these days. There's something different in your eyes. You seem like you're finally you. They're right. But what they don't see is what it costs to get here. And what it gave me. I learned that peace doesn't come from forgiveness you're forced to give. It doesn't come from keeping the family together. And it doesn't come from winning their approval. Peace comes when you stop begging for crumbs from people who never planned to feed you, and build your damn table. That's what I have now. A life that fits me. A circle of people who don't need me to explain why I left, because they've left their storms too. And a future I no longer feel guilty for protecting. If I could go back and talk to the version of me that almost handed over the house just to keep the peace, I'd tell her. You're not selfish for setting the boundary. You're not wrong for walking away. And you're not broken for wanting to be free. My family chose legacy over love. Entitlement over empathy. Control over connection. And when they did, I chose myself. And I've made that choice every day since.